The number one question flooding my inbox this week is this. If the Clarity Act is so good for crypto, why are the loudest Bitcoin voices on the planet suddenly begging Donald Trump to veto it? Think about that for a second. Arthur Hayes, billionaire, founder of BitMEX, a man who built his entire empire on Bitcoin, publicly going on camera and saying he hopes the President of the United States kills the most important piece of crypto legislation in American history. That should stop you cold, because what I am about to tell you is not being explained to retail investors the way it should be. While everyone is staring at red candles, while Robinhood's crypto revenue collapses 47% year over year, while Mark Cuban quietly dumps almost all of his Bitcoin on national television, something massive is happening underneath the surface. The Bitcoin maximalists have finally figured out what the institutions figured out 3 years ago.
The Clarity Act was never built for Bitcoin. It was built for utility. It was built for tokenization. It was built for the rails. And it was built, whether they want to admit it or not, for XRP. Let me pull back the curtain. Make sure to like and subscribe and drop a comment below with your opinion on XRP. And watch until the end, because the final minutes reveal why July 13th could change everything. Welcome back to the channel. I am the analyst who refuses to chase hype and refuses to sell fear. Today we decode what Arthur Hayes, Mark Cuban, and the entire Bitcoin maximalist establishment are actually telling you when they panic about regulation. Before we go under the surface, this is not financial advice. This is structural analysis. In this briefing, we examine why the Clarity Act represents a tectonic shift away from speculative store-of-value narratives and toward utility-driven settlement infrastructure, and why the smart money has been quietly positioning for this exact outcome for years. Let's start with the hard truth. 90% of crypto investors are staring at the wrong scoreboard. They watch Bitcoin's price. They watch Ethereum gas fees. They watch meme coin charts. And they think that is the market. It is not the market. It is the distraction. To understand why Arthur Hayes is begging Trump to veto the Clarity Act, you have to understand what regulation actually does to a crypto asset. Regulation is a filter. It separates assets that have a verifiable real-world function from assets that exist purely as speculative instruments. When the Clarity Act passes, every single token on the market gets sorted into one of two buckets. Bucket 1, tokens that move value, settle transactions, tokenize real-world assets, or provide measurable utility to financial institutions. Bucket 2, tokens that exist because someone bought them, hoping someone else would buy them at a higher price. Bitcoin is not in Bucket 1, and Arthur Hayes knows it. Listen carefully to what he actually said. He said if Bitcoin needed regulations to survive, it would not be worth a dime. He said institutionalizing Bitcoin turns it into a Fugazi derivative sitting on a bank's balance sheet. Translation? Bitcoin's entire value proposition was that it operated outside the financial system. The moment regulation legitimizes it, the moment BlackRock holds it in custody, the moment Coinbase wraps it in a publicly traded ETF, Bitcoin loses the only thing that ever made it special. Its outsider status, its rebellion. Its scarcity narrative gets absorbed into the very system it was designed to escape. And here's the part nobody is saying out loud. Mark Cuban just confirmed it. He said Bitcoin failed its biggest test. When the Iran conflict erupted, when gold ripped to $5,000, when fiat currencies wobbled across multiple economies, Bitcoin did the opposite of what it was supposed to do. It dropped. Cuban sold almost his entire position because the hedge thesis collapsed in real time on his television screen. This is not me saying Bitcoin is dead. This is the founder of BitMEX and a billionaire shareholder telling you the original thesis is broken. Now contrast that with what is actually being built. While the maximalists are panicking, Hashtag's webinar just confirmed on the record that every regulatory advance, every institutional development, every piece of infrastructure being constructed right now touches smart contract platforms, tokenization, stablecoins, and decentralized finance. None of it touches Bitcoin. None of it. You see, retail investors think regulation is a tide that lifts all boats. But financial institutions, they understand that regulation is a sorting machine, and the machine is sorting in favor of utility. The machine is sorting in favor of the XRP ledger. Let's do the math that the Bitcoin maximalists do not want you to do. Ripple issues approximately 200 million XRP per month from escrow, with a hard cap of 100 billion tokens. Of that, roughly 55 to 57 billion are in circulation. The rest is locked, burned through transaction fees, or held in cold storage by entities that are not selling. Now overlay that against the market's XRP is being engineered to capture. Cross-border payments, $150 trillion annually. Foreign exchange, $7.5 trillion every single trading day. Tokenized real-world assets, a $4 trillion wave forecasted to hit blockchain rails over the next several years. Nostro Vostro accounts holding $27 trillion in idle pre-funded liquidity that XRP was literally designed to liberate. Here is the math that the retail crowd ignores. If XRP captures even 0.5% of the cross-border payments market, that is $750 billion in annual settlement volume. At current circulating supply, that level of throughput cannot exist at $1 or $2 per token. The math does not work. To move that much value with that few tokens, the price per token has to rise. Not because of speculation. Because of liquidity efficiency. Think about it. If you want to settle a $100 million corporate transfer and XRP is priced at 50 cents, you need 200 million tokens to clear that transaction without slippage. But at $50 per token, you only need 2 million tokens. At $500, you need 200,000. The higher the price, the fewer tokens required, the less liquidity drag on the network. This is not Moonboy fantasy. This is a design requirement. Now look at the comparison the original analyst made about NVIDIA. $5.35 trillion market cap, which would put XRP at $53.50 per token if it matched. But here is what they got wrong. NVIDIA is a stock. It produces chips. XRP is a settlement layer for tokenized assets. These are not comparable use cases. XRP is not competing with NVIDIA. XRP is competing with Swift. Swift processes $150 trillion per year. NVIDIA's entire market cap is 3% of Swift's annual settlement volume. If XRP captures even a fraction of Swift's flow, the NVIDIA comparison becomes laughable. The math points somewhere far higher. This isn't a prediction. It's a requirement. If you have a problem with these numbers, you don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with the laws of supply and demand. While retail investors are panic selling because Robinhood's crypto revenue dropped 47%, the institutional signal has never been stronger. Look at what is actually happening. Ripple acquired Hidden Road, a prime brokerage that clears trillions in traditional finance volume. Ripple acquired G-Treasury, plugging XRP infrastructure directly into corporate treasury management systems. RLUSD just gained institutional yield access through Copper Custody, one of the most respected digital asset custodians in the world. Every single one of these moves expands the addressable use case for the XRP ledger. Ask yourself this brutal question. Does Ripple make hundreds of millions of dollars in acquisitions if they don't already have signed commitments from institutional partners ready to use these rails? Absolutely not. They don't gamble. They position. Now look at what the original analyst said about the Clarity Act timeline. 18 months from signature to full implementation. And he is correct. But here is what the maximalists do not want you to understand. Institutions don't wait 18 months. They wait for the signature. The moment that pen touches paper, the legal risk premium that has kept trillions in dry powder on the sidelines evaporates overnight. Compliance teams already have their playbooks written. Legal departments already have their contracts drafted. Custody arrangements are already negotiated under NDA. The day after Trump signs, you will see announcements. Not in 18 months. Days. This isn't retail FOMO. This is calculated positioning by market makers, custodians, and sovereign-tier financial institutions who know exactly which assets pass the Clarity Act filter and which ones don't. And then there is the part that nobody is connecting. Listen to what Ripple's SVP just said about CBDCs. He said the United States will not have a central bank digital currency for decades. But he also said something more important. He said the role of clearing banks will be to hold tokenized reserves and provide access to them for settlement. Read between the lines. The infrastructure for tokenized money is being built right now. And the bridge between those tokenized reserves, between RLUSD, between tokenized treasuries, between tokenized real-world assets, is the XRP ledger. While the Bitcoin maximalists scream about ideological purity, BlackRock is filing for tokenization frameworks. Franklin Templeton is putting money market funds on chain. The Bank of Japan, the European Central Bank, and the Bank of England are all working on tokenized reserve systems. Every single one of these institutions needs neutral settlement infrastructure. Bitcoin cannot do that. Ethereum gas fees cannot do that. XRP can. Let's talk about the specific dates that matter. The Clarity Act is the final green light. The moment it receives the presidential signature, the legal classification ambiguity that has paralyzed institutional adoption disappears. Banks that have been waiting on the sidelines for half a decade get the regulatory cover they need to deploy capital. Treasury desks that have been quietly accumulating through OTC channels can finally move that exposure onto their public balance sheets. The wait-and-see money becomes all-in money. Then there is the European Central Bank's digital euro timeline. They are targeting next year for live deployment. The Bank of England is years deep into its own design. The Bank of Japan is positioning. Every single one of these central bank digital currency frameworks will need an interoperability layer to communicate with private stablecoins, with tokenized assets, with cross-border counterparties. That interoperability layer is being built on XRP rails. And then there is the tokenization wave. Larry Fink himself, CEO of BlackRock, has been on record saying the future of finance is tokenization of every asset. Stocks, bonds, real estate, commodities, private equity. $4 trillion in tokenized assets is forecasted to hit blockchain rails in the next 24 to 36 months. Every single tokenized asset needs settlement. Every settlement needs a bridge currency. The XRP ledger handles tokenization natively, with built-in compliance features that no other major chain offers at the protocol level. When the Clarity Act arrives, the regulatory ceiling vanishes. When the tokenization wave arrives, the use case explodes. When the CBDC interoperability frameworks deploy, the network effect becomes unstoppable. The fuse is lit. We are moving from an era of abundance to an era of scarcity. Right now, you can still buy whole XRP tokens. You can still accumulate full units. You can still build a meaningful position with a few $1,000s. That window is closing. Once Ripple's institutional partners begin using these rails at scale, the supply dynamics change permanently. Tokens that move into multi-signature institutional vaults do not come back to market for a 10% profit. They are gone. They are productive collateral. They are sitting in escrow for tokenized treasury bonds, for cross-border settlement reserves, for derivatives margin. They are working capital for the new financial system, not speculative inventory waiting to be sold. Track exchange reserves. Watch them drain. Every weekly print of declining XRP balances on centralized exchanges is a signal that someone, somewhere, is moving size into long-term storage. Once the float gets thin enough, the price discovery mechanism breaks. A small wave of institutional buying meets a vanishing supply. Price gaps, not gradually, violently. And here's the part that the original analyst hinted at, but did not fully articulate. He said, "You should not be spending XRP on coffee right now." He is right. But the deeper truth is this. Every XRP you spend, every XRP you sell at the wrong price, becomes the exit liquidity of the confused that funds the entry of the informed. The institutions have spent years trying to shake retail out so they can take your position. Every time you panic at a red candle, every time you doubt the thesis, every time you sell into FUD, you are handing your position to someone who has done the math and is willing to wait. When the final switch is flipped, the retail market gets knocked out. You won't be able to buy whole tokens anymore. You'll be buying drops. 1 million drops to a single XRP. That is the math of being priced out. The door is closing fast. I know it's tough to watch the headlines right now. Robinhood's crypto revenue collapsed 47%. Coinbase's COO is stepping down. Mark Cuban dumped his Bitcoin. Arthur Hayes is calling for the death of the Clarity Act. Crypto companies across the board are scrambling to prove they can generate revenue in a slump. To the casual observer, this looks like the death of crypto. But as an analyst, I am trained to distinguish between noise and signal. Let me show you what is actually happening. The companies failing right now are the ones whose entire business model depended on speculative trading volume. They sold the casino. When the casino went quiet, their revenue evaporated. That is not a crypto problem. That is a business model problem. Compare that to Ripple. Ripple grew through the worst bear market in crypto history. Ripple expanded into dozens of jurisdictions while their American competitors were folding up shop. Ripple acquired Hidden Road, G Treasury, Metaco. Ripple launched RLUSD. Ripple secured banking licenses, broker-dealer registrations, and money transmission approvals across multiple continents. Ripple did not survive the bear market. Ripple used the bear market as a construction site. The same is true for the broader cohort of utility-driven projects. Hedera kept building. Stellar kept building. XDC kept building. Quant, Algorand, Cardano, Flare. Every single one of these networks expanded their infrastructure, while the speculative trash that dominated 2021 quietly went to zero. While the masses are focused on price action, the smart money is focused on infrastructure completion. Being early feels exactly like being wrong, right up until the moment reality catches up. The question is not whether the regulatory framework will arrive. It is arriving. The question is not whether tokenization will deploy on the XRP ledger. The agreements are already in place. The question is who will still be holding when these milestones become the new floor. Patience is not a passive virtue in this market. It is the active discipline that separates the people who get rich from the people who watched it happen. Make sure to like and subscribe and drop a comment below with your opinion on XRP. And watch until the end, because the final minutes reveal why July 13th could change everything. So let me bring it all together. Arthur Hayes wants Trump to veto the Clarity Act because he understands that regulation does not save Bitcoin. It exposes Bitcoin. Mark Cuban dumped his Bitcoin because the store of value thesis collapsed in real time when geopolitical chaos drove gold higher and Bitcoin lower. Robinhood and Coinbase are facing existential revenue pressure because the speculative trading model is dying. Every regulatory advance, every institutional development, every piece of infrastructure being built right now points away from Bitcoin and toward utility. Meanwhile, Ripple is acquiring prime brokerages. RLUSD is gaining institutional custody. The XRP ledger is being engineered to carry the tokenization of trillions in real-world assets. Central banks are building tokenized reserve frameworks that will need the exact interoperability layer XRP provides. The Clarity Act is days or weeks away from signature, and the moment it lands, the institutional dam breaks. This is not a coincidence. This is the structure of a transition. One asset is a bubble that has lost the plot. The other is the bridge that connects the old financial system to the new one. One has billionaire founders begging for its veto. The other has billion-dollar acquisitions positioning for its launch. The question is, are you watching the noise or are you watching the structure? History does not reward comfort. It rewards those who pay attention when the room is quiet. If you made it this far, drop the word structure in the comments. I want to see who actually understands the difference between a bubble and a bridge. If you value this kind of deep dive analysis that goes beyond the headlines and connects the dots that the maximalists do not want you to connect, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. In a market fueled by emotion and noise, we thrive on data and composure. Stay patient, stay rational. The math doesn't lie, and the system is almost complete.